You toss two six-sided dice. What is the probability that the total of the two dice is 7? Sometimes we have a lot of different outcomes in our sample space, and we'd like to kind of maybe visualize it. One of the ways we can do that, specifically when you have two different things that comprise your sample space, so our two dice here, we can create a little table. Okay, so we could have the first die can land as either a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And the second die I'll do now down as rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And then we can create a little table that represents each, where we'll have a little grid, and each spot on the grid will represent one of our different outcomes. Okay, so I got a column for each of our outcomes for the first die, and a row for each of our outcomes for the outcome of the second die. So each of these spots now represents one of my outcomes. So this was my first die, and this is my second die. Now, so for example, what I'm saying, in this spot right here, I'm saying the first die landed as a 5 and the second die landed as a 3. Okay, that's one of my outcomes. So we can see that the number of outcomes in our sample space, oh, that was a fancy, the number of outcomes in our sample space, I can see that there's 36 different outcomes, okay? And that comes from my fundamental counting principle as well. Of course, there's 6 outcomes for the first times 6 for the second. Now my event, the number of ways that my event can occur, my event is that the total of the two dice is 7. So if I add those two, the two numbers, I get 7. So that can happen as if the first die is a 1 and the second is a 6, or if the first is a 2 and the second is a 5, or a 3 and a 4, or a 4 and a 3, or a 5 and a 2, or a 6 and a 1. So each of these boxes represents one of the outcomes in my event. So the number of ways that can happen is 6. 6 ways that can happen. So now the probability of my event, the probability of the sum of the two dice being a 7, is the number of ways the event can occur over the number in the sample space, or 6 over 36, which reduces to 1/6.